Welcome to Look, Listen, Laugh. My guest today is comedian Choolburra, and I just love the way that Sean is able to take his Aboriginal upbringing and turn it into comedy gold. We're going to sit down and discuss his favourite book, film and album. So sit back, relax and enjoy my conversation with Choolburra. Sean, I got to thank you for being here today. I know how hectic today's been for you. You've been up since what, 4:30?
4:30,
this morning, and you flew back to Sydney.
Yes.
Flew then back down here to Melbourne, and then you did a show this afternoon.
Yeah.
Basically, you've come straight from that over to here. So thank you.
No, you're welcome. Yeah, a little bit tired, so
Yeah.
we'll see how I go.
Yeah, no, I'll be fine. How do you find that with gigs? You know, when you're tired,
Yeah.
and you go on. Sometimes I've found it like you go on when you're tired, and it kind of. It makes you a bit looser, you know?
Yeah.
It takes away the kind of anxiety or the stress of it.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's interesting. I found that at times, like when I've just been like jet lagged, like getting back from overseas or going overseas, and it sort of helps in a way. It takes away all of that, the pressure.
Yeah, absolutely right. Like you just go in and there's no angst, there's no anxiety, there's no it doesn't feel like a pressure. Or, you just go in and you're like, yep, and then bam, and it's usually a really good show.
But yeah, it's interesting. Because I find that when you're more relaxed on stage too, that helps a lot with the, for me, you know, with connecting with the audience. You know, I feel when you're too much in your head or too sort of anxious, it becomes a bit, I don't know, it creates a gap between you and the audience. And connecting.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
How were you when you started? Did you used to get nervous before going on?
Yeah, very nervous. You know, because it was so hard, you know, like I used to be so nervous because for me it was kind of like a new medium because I came from a dance background.
Right.
You know, so for dance, to go out to an audience and dance and perform a dance piece, that for me felt normal.
Right.
And it felt natural.
Right.
You know, and I could just do it with my eyes shut. There was almost no anxiety in that, no angst in that, where I could just go on and do and all these dance. I was in a dance company.
Yeah, the Bangara dance company, right? Yeah.
Bangara dance company, and all that kind of stuff. But with the stand-up, I found it was different. You're on stage, just you and the microphone, and you're actually talking or telling stories or trying to make the people laugh at what you find funny or the jokes or whatever. And I always found that very tricky. And I've kind of feel now, you know, after 20 odd years, I'm kind of finding it now.
Just this, like you did with the dancing, that ease or
that ease.
Yeah.
And I'm sort of, I think whether it's an age thing where I'm almost like, you know, man, I'm like, I've seen it all, done it all, da. You know, I mightn't have got to where I really would like to have gone, but hey, you know, I'm happy with where I'm at.
But the great thing with what we do too is there's no real time limit on it. It's not like a dancer or a sports star or, you know, when they're, all right, you hit that age, you can't really do what you did before. But with comedy, I think, you know, there's like George Carlin was doing that into his 70s. You had George Burns doing stand-up into his 90s. I think it's a kind of, there's longevity to this game. So,
Do you find like there's the longevity of it, but also there's another word called relevancy? You know, it's almost like the crippling sports player injury.
Yeah,
sure. You're not relevant anymore.
Yeah, but you see that with actors too.
Yeah.
You know, like they're the hot actor, and then they're not. But then they have the resurgence again later on. Like you see it a lot lately, like with he won the Academy Award this year for that film.
Brendan Fraser.
Brendan Fraser. You know, like he was really hot when he was younger, then out and then back again. Same with Matthew McConaughey. He was like, you know, had that kind of period, then came back. So, you know, I can't see why they can't be for comedians as well, you know. It's like someone like Rodney Dangerfield. He started when he was younger. You know, got a bit of heat, but then kind of faded. And then, you know, in his 40s, you know, that's when he really hit his stride, you know? When he sort of brought the, you know, wide appeal. And you see it with people like Richard Pryor too, you know, he was popular when he was younger and then just sort of gave all that away, went and did the coffee houses and found his own voice, rebuilt it, and then, you know, became one of the comedy greats.
Yeah.
So it's, there's still time, my friend.
Yeah, and I've sort of come back and forth as well, and I found now I'm feeling it.
Yeah, it's good. What, just the interest in the hot pursuit of continuing doing comedy.
Yeah,
that's what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you did a one-man show last year, right?
Yeah.
Which I wish I heard such great things about it. I really want to see that. But,
yeah.
But how do you find that, like, being more revealing with the material and
it was probably more like a theater show.
Yeah.
You know, I kind of, when I created it, I sort of saw it at me at the Opera House.
Yes.
Because I just thought it's such a different comedy show.
Yeah.
You know, you're coming on. You're doing jokes about COVID, all the latest, whatever stuff that's happening in the world, your Donald Trump stuff, da. And then bam, you went into this whole lifestyle story about yourself. Yeah. Born in 1969, my mum was watching James Bond, named after Sean Connery. You know, so I went into this whole story about all this and, you know, the father not being there, you know, he was a drinker, you know, slept in the park and, you know, there's all these layers to, you know, having a large family, 7 brothers, 4 sisters, and you know, at the crossroads where I see my dad, and he goes, "Don't ever let me catch you down here," and then I say, "Okay," and then I cruise along riding on my bicycle, and I see this black dude in a suit holding a briefcase, and it was like the crossroads: do I become like my dad or this guy? And I said, "Man, who's this guy?" You know, and his name was Marcus Pedro. He was a DJ in Townsville. So I met him and he goes, "Yeah, you want to become a DJ?" So I became a DJ in pretty much 88, pretty much 86.
So you're a verified DJ spinning vinyl. Yeah, the old school, like the real DJs, not these just twisting knobs with a CD or whatever.
Yeah. And we had to, my job for him as an apprentice DJ was to go through all his record list and count the beats per minute.
Yeah, wow.
Every record. And I don't know, you don't get sick of it.
Yeah.
We would do it like we were there from, 8:30, 9 a.m. all the way through to, 3 to 5 p.m. or whatever it was. And you're just counting records and you're just mixing and scratching and practicing. And it was that really crossroads. And in my comedy show, that life story of myself, I have these turntables and I start mixing.
Oh, fantastic.
And,
great.
And I jump out the front of it and start doing the old famous, Will Smith's, Apache dance. So I kind of do a bit of that, jump on it. Because often you can see a DJ where he's kind of just doing his thing and he's got great mixes. But I did see one of my DJ heroes was Grandmaster Flash.
Yeah.
And I remember watching I think they had about 5 DJs before him. And then he came on. And it must have been about 1 o'clock in the morning. And he goes, it all started in 1960, or 78, I think, he said. And the song was, and he played It's Just Begun.
Yeah.
And he goes, dun 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 dun, you say, and then he had his famous, you say, dun 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 dun, you say, one for the trouble, and he started mixing. I was like, oh my goodness. And this guy was pretty old, at the time. And I remember seeing the Grandmaster Flash record when I was about 12 or 13. And I was inspired to
That was the game changer.
That was a game changer, and also got into breakdancing.
Yes.
And, you do the graffitiing.
You were bona fide. You went the...
Yeah, you kind of, like the teachers up there, talking about history and geography and all that, and you're at the back writing... You're doing graffiti, yeah. You're writing your name or your girlfriend's name, or you're just writing hip hop, you don't stop or whatever. And you just, because you were so, you've never seen it before,
Yeah, and especially in that time too. Yeah, it was such a new frontier.
Yeah.
All of that in the 80s. I mean.
Yeah, it was a music that really spoke because, growing up, we'd hear our granddad playing the didgeridoo and all that, and we'd hear... my mum would be playing old country western music. For some reason, Aboriginal people love country western. I don't know what it is. It's like, it's crazy mix. And then when I heard hip hop and rap and I saw it, they said this is the new dance craze coming out of New York City, and they had this kid doing this elevator move, and I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Like I connected to it. It wasn't the barn dancing that we learned, square dancing at school.
But you had the mix too, because you were watching, you know, your elders, your family doing dancing. And I remember you telling me how you learned from observation. So you had that foundation of dance before embracing all these other forms.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember 1974, I was at school and all my family came to dance. And all the white kids would hit me and go on and go dance. And I was so shy, you know. I was like, I was so ashamed that my family came and danced at my school, you know. They were all there. But now I go to my kids' school and dance, and my kids are so proud of it, you know.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And also too, seeing your show the other week, and it was great, the fact that you're showing so many young people the tradition and the history of the land that we live in. And it's a great way of doing it through comedy, through a comedy festival. Makes it very accessible for young people to come and experience. So it's not like being in a classroom saying then this and then you're actually doing it. You're showing them. You know, but also bring your personality to it as well. It's great. You
know, and that personality rubs off from my granddads, my aunties and uncles who were very comedic, they were very funny, and they were very generous with it as well. You know, so when I teach it, I go, these are your stories. You know, it's not a us and they.
Yeah, it's a connectedness of everyone.
It's a connectedness. And when you go there, you see that waterfall, you go, oh my goodness. This is the story of the dragonfly, you know. So obviously in my jokes of it, you know, there's a lot of jokes that I kind of mix in there as well and talk about, man, I thought we were the only people who did the dragonfly dance till I saw a Kevin Costner movie, you know. So, you know, it's relatable where people go, they're expecting serious, you know.
But that's what makes it so unique and accessible too, right? And laughter, it just like you said before, everyone's connected with this, so it just breaks down the barriers as well, I think.
Yeah, it breaks down the barriers, and I think, like I just came from a show just now, and this little kid wouldn't get off the stage. He was just fascinated with these fire sticks. So I just had to give it to him and say, man, you take this home.
Oh, really?
And Dad, can you just, you know, cut a little groove in it so you can get it going, you know, get him some coconut husk, you know, so you can get.
That's really thinking great now. Now I'm gonna have the fireman on speed dial. That's fantastic.
I think that's what it's about, you know, like you know, I did find a shift in it, you know, like almost in that waves. Like I think during that COVID time, I think people really saw their lives different.
Sure.
You know, I think they really saw, all right, now our excuse to go out is if we're camping or doing sports, and they really went out and really appreciated the outdoors.
Good point, because a lot of people look at the obvious tragic side of COVID, but when you look at it, just putting a pause on the rat race, on being stuck in this treadmill and just taking a step back and looking at your life, and you know, some people went either way with it. They just sat and watched Netflix and ordered Uber Eats, you know, and other people, you know, reflected a lot on, you know, what's meaningful in life and what means something to us as well. And
I went bush. I just started making artifacts, you know.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so during that whole lockdown, the whole thing, I went home, you know, and I cruised through the borders, you know, I had my border permit.
Yeah, fantastic.
And I went home and I just made all these artifacts, and it was just a way of me just sort of thinking, well, now I've got time to do this. Normally, you know.
Yeah, would you have normally done that? No, you wouldn't have,
My school demand is too busy.
Yeah.
Sometimes the comedy shows is too busy.
Yeah.
You're on a plane each
you're off
week.
to Edinburgh, you're flying all over the world.
You don't have time to just sit in that bush and just, you know, and just cut shields and make artifacts and just appreciate and swim in waterfalls and creeks and rivers and fishing and watching the odd crocodile swim past, and you're just like, man, it put that, like you said, that pause. For me, it really, I talk about it in my one-man show where I did, and I actually I mean, it's a silly thing to thank, you know, the pandemic, but I actually thank it for, you know, I had time to, you know, bury my mum in it, you know, and grieve. Like normally I'd go to families' funerals, fly in, it was like a Hollywood funeral. I'd fly in and fly out, you know, and say my last goodbyes and not even grieve, not even understand the emotions of, you're burying your own brother or your sister, not have no emotion. And in that moment, here I was burying my mom, but I didn't see it as funny, because when I buried my mom and I had the time to do up her grave and all this, you know, so I bought all these rocks. She loves flowers, like any typical mum, doing all the flowers, doing all the plants, and, you know, I kept going to Bunnings and every day, you know, Bunnings had a sale on those solar-powered lights that you stick in the ground.
Yeah.
It said buy 4, get 12 free. So there were 16 lights. So here I am plugging them all in, and you pull the tab out and all the lights start coming on.
Yeah.
The problem is, the Townsville Cemetery is right next to the Townsville Airport. So it looks like a runway. So these planes are about to land on my mom, you know. So I turned this whole thing into comedy, you know, and the guy next to my mom who died must have played sports, so they left all these sports things there. So I pick up these table tennis battens. I'm like waving these airplanes. No, don't land. This is my mom here. Don't land on my mom, you know. So I kind of, you know, like it allowed me to, you know, really see life again and really understand it and just grieve. And it was an emotion I'd never really understood and never, you know, because it was always like funny, joke, laugh. And then you really felt that. So it created a depth within understanding who you were. And it almost now kind of takes that angst away from the comedy where I'm walking on stage, because I understand it now. I understand how life works.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you have something real to share of yourself, as opposed to, I got to get the laugh. It's like, no, the laugh will come from this experience or this meaningful thing that I want to share.
Yeah.
Which does bring a more of an ease to the delivery of it.
Yeah, and I remember like these comedians, other comics came to the show and they're like, there's nothing like it. We've never seen a show like it where you're doing jokes that are relevant, you know, and then you're doing this whole life story. Then you're talking about burying your mom.
Yeah.
And then you're talking about it becomes a runway, you know, it becomes funny.
Yeah.
And then you're, you know, and then you end up doing a traditional dance at the end, because you explain to the audience you're named after a famous Scotsman, Sean Connery, and then you explain your name at the end, your proper name, your Australian bush name, you know? Yeah, and it kind of has all these sort of things. And we watch comedians on Netflix all the time, and you kind of watch them, you go, wow, they're great, brilliant, and you're so inspired and all that. But you sort of think, man, I wonder if my show would be all right on it, because it's so different.
Yeah, having that point of difference makes, you know, as corny as it sounds, it makes a world of difference. You know, when you're not just getting up there, where are you from? What do you do for a living? You know, so it's a bit, you know, you're actually getting insight into you through the material.
Yeah.
But also the idea when you, like Akmal and I always talk about this, the comedy formula of tragedy plus time, you know?
Yeah.
And having, you know, clearly a tragic time in your life to, you know, lose a loved one, but having that time to reflect on that and mourn, and then be able to come out on that and deal with and cope with it through comedy as well. It's a nice, and I think an audience, because, you know, everyone's had shit happen in their life. Everyone's had something that's so they can relate to that on a human level as well, as opposed to like, hey, you know, what about the black box on the flight? You know, it's like, whatever. Why don't they make the whole plane out of the black box? You know, like, it's like it takes it away from that. Just that joke kind of delivery or style.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mentioned Akmal in my show as well.
Oh, you do? Yeah.
And I do a lot of high school motivational talks.
Yeah.
And I mention Akmal in every talk. And I must visit close to 300 to 500 schools a year.
Yeah.
And Akmal Saleh's name gets put in there each and every day without fail, because my friend, his name was Midgie, and when I was 10 years old, Midgie told me to do stand-up comedy. And years later, I'm at 33 years old, I walk into the Fox Studios comedy store.
Yeah.
And I'm watching these comics do it. Already I've had a dance background, all this kind of background, but stand-up comedy was brand new, but I've always was fascinated.
Had that desire.
This desire. And I remember doing it and all that, and then starting out, and Akmal said, you got to get on the footy show. That's what he said to me.
Yeah.
And the footy show launched it, you know, because I told a joke back then, about who invented Kung Fu. You know, and it came from this joke. And because Akmal said, you should tell that joke on the footy show. And I said, how do I get on the footy show? He said, just write him a letter. So I wrote them a letter, and I talk about in the high school, because it motivates the high school students, that I went there all by myself to Fox Studios comedy, not the comedy store, the Channel 9 studios.
Yeah.
You know, the TV station all by myself. I didn't have my mum with me.
Yeah.
I didn't have
no support.
No support.
Yeah.
I drove in my old 1980-something Commodore station wagon, because that's how I roll, you know. You know, and I rocked up, and I remember who gave me a really good sort of, compliment as well was, he was an Australian guy who moved to the UK, Clive James.
Clive James. I love Clive James. Yeah. He was great. I used to watch him on TV all the time when I was a kid, and there was just something about him I just warmed to. Brilliant.
Well, yeah, he just said, look, this guy, he's got potential, you know, and he mentioned, he put me next to some other comic, I don't know who
So he had seen you perform at a gig somewhere?
No, he just saw me that night.
Oh, on the footy show?
Yeah,
right.
Live on the footy show.
And he wrote about that in one of his...
They said, how would he go? You know?
Yeah.
You've seen a lot of comics, how would he go? And he goes, he's got potential to go, you know? And, you know, and it was a really good compliment for me, because it kind of really took off for me. And then he kind of takes off and then comes back down. Yeah, goes up and down.
Yeah. Which is life, really.
Yeah, which is life, yeah. I modelled my footy show around Carl Barron. I saw him, and they told me he was on 3 times in 1 year.
Yeah.
And I said, you know what? I just said it to myself, being a little cocky, you know. And I said, and you got to have that self-belief. And I said, I'm going to get on 3 times. In 1 year.
Yeah.
And I did, and it was
fantastic.
Once, and then the second time again, and the third time was the video, the VHS video or whatever that came out.
Oh yeah, the best of.
The footy show.
Yeah.
And guess who was introducing me on it? Carl Barron.
Oh really? Oh man, that's great.
So but you know, even though I set that goal, you know, I set that goal and said I'm going to get on 3 times, and there it was. Yeah, but I've never saw the footy show.
You never saw it? You never watched it before you went on?
Yeah, I've never ever seen it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never ever saw it. Yeah.
What you mean, your performance?
Yeah.
Or, oh, really?
Yeah, my performance, and I never really...
They never sent you a tape or anything? Or?
They sent me a tape, and I think they sent me a check and said, you know, here's your royalties from the video, DVD or whatever, and I just gave it to family.
Yeah.
And I've never ever saw it, you know.
Do you find it hard watching yourself do comedy? Yes. Yeah, likewise. Or listening back. I record a lot of sets that I do, but I rarely listen back. It's like, I don't know, it's just something, it's difficult watching.
I did watch the first time, and I've never really watched, the last time I did one was 2008, and it was a comedy gala that I watched.
Yeah.
And the next time I watched it was just now, 23.
Yeah.
And I watched it, and my missus said, no, you've got to watch it.
Yeah.
You know?
I think there is a benefit to just pick up on little things that you don't notice about yourself too, that you might have a tick or something. Like I kept on saying a certain word when I listened back, and I'm like, to one of my performances, I'm like, why am I saying that word? It's not needed. Like just cut all that out. So yeah, it does help, but it's you know, certain directors like Woody Allen, he doesn't watch any of his films. Johnny Depp.
That's what I thought. Yeah. You know, I heard Johnny Depp does the same thing, and I thought, well, fancy that. I do the same.
I knew Johnny and I had something in common.
Yeah. So I don't know what it is. I mean, like, you'd understand me not watching. But Johnny Depp, I mean, he's a beautiful man. Did you expect him to watch his stuff?
Yeah. But I kind of like that in a way that kind of like these people that you respect or admire, and you hear like Akmal, he can't watch, you know, his own stuff either, and it's like it's kind of nice to hear that there's you know, Yeah, you don't want any. It would be weird for someone to be sitting back just watching themselves all the time, going, "Yeah, this is good. Yeah, he's good."
I had an ex-girlfriend who had just photos all around the house of herself.
Yeah, right.
And I was just like,
yeah. Clearly a narcissist, but you know when people used to be full of themselves, and you'd be like, look at this person, they're fucking full of it. But now it's like, no, I suffer from narcissism. That's what. Oh, it's a condition that you have to respect. Oh, all right, jeez. It's like an excuse for everyone's abhorrent behavior now.
Yeah. I've got anxiety. We all have it. Yeah. Try and walk on stage, we all get it.
Yeah. It's it is a funny. Yeah, and it's good to comment on stuff like that too, you know, through comedy as well, and just sort of call it out as well.
Yeah.
But nowadays, you know, certain times people start picketing outside other people's shows. Like there was someone that made a comment recently about the Dalai Lama comment that was lost in translation. Did you hear about that? About the old Tibetan saying that he said, but you know, he speaks kind of broken English, and then it was sort of misinterpreted, and then a comedian made a comment about it, and then apparently they were outside, picketing outside of his show, and Akmal was telling me about it. Yeah.
I didn't even know. My kids want ice cream at 9:30 at night. And I go down, and I thought someone just finished the show. We walked through, I didn't even know it was a protest.
Oh, you really?
We walked through the protest.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Comic lives matter. No.
Yeah, it is. But you know, I would think the Dalai Lama would just laugh at all of that anyway, just because, like, you know, I've seen him live a few times. Like, just like he did like a week course on meditation, like over a decade ago. And every day he had protesters outside of his. They were Chinese protesters against him, saying that he's not the rightful sort of representation of Tibet, and he just brushed it off. He said, you know, they call me demons. What do? So I show them my horns. You know, that's his response to it. So I don't think he'd get caught up in all of that anyway.
I got asked to perform for him.
You did?
Yeah.
Ah.
And you know, this was probably 20-something years ago.
Yeah.
And at the time I was working at the Art Gallery of New South Wales.
Right.
Doing like a dance show, Aboriginal dance show.
Yeah.
And more of an educational show. And they said, we've got this date. Do you know His Holiness the Dalai Lama? And I go, yeah, I know him, yeah. Well, you know, I mean, I heard of him, you know. They go, well, they've requested you to meet him and perform for him.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they closed off the whole thing. And
really?
Yeah, and here I was sitting there playing the didgeridoo, and he comes just walking in with his entourage.
Yeah. How was it?
It was good. He just laughed all the way through it. Yeah. Because I was doing like kangaroo dance and all the dances. There. I think he saw it funny. You know?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and I thought,
and he's like, this guy should be a comedian.
Yeah. And it was. He gave me his, you know, the white shawl sort of thing he wears. Yeah. Gave me that, and I took my headband off and gave it to him. And
great.
Yeah. So it was quite interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. I've always liked. I saw him years ago give a talk, and the person said, "What is the meaning of life?" You know? And he said, "The meaning of life. The best answer I could come up with for that is, I don't know." You know, and it's good. I like that comedic kind of way of dealing with, you know, who knows what it is really at the end of the day. But he would say stuff like, "This is what I believe to be so. When we die, I think this happens."
Yeah.
That can't be 100%. Who knows? I mean, I haven't died. How can I say that that's exactly what's going to happen? So, and I always find like the most sort of insightful or intelligent people, you know, will say, you know, this is what I believe to be so with the information at hand. But beyond that, who knows?
Who knows? Yeah.
You know, all I know is I know nothing at all. You know, you know, I think that's a kind of nice way to approach.
Yeah.
You know, approach life in general. I guess. You know, have an idea of, you know, what you think is, but be open to whatever other ideas might be out there.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, on this podcast, we have there's an element to it where I just thought, you know, when I was coming up with the idea of this, how do we, you know, we want to sit down and have a chat, right?
Yeah.
But I thought so many podcasts you listen to that just goes off on tangents that I don't know, there's no structure to it. So I thought with this one being called Look, Listen, Laugh, I asked my guests to bring along their favorite album, favorite book, and favorite film.
Yeah.
So you being musically inclined, having, you know, a history of loving great music, especially from our generation through the 80s, the album that you have picked for us today is, drum roll.
Prince and the Revolution. This album, Purple Rain.
Look at this.
Yeah, now I got introduced to Prince, and I think it was his For You album that came out in 1979.
Yeah.
And my brother introduced me to Prince, and I looked at him and I thought, wow, who is this guy?
Yeah.
He had no shirt on, he brushed his hair, and he just looked, you know, interesting.
Yeah.
And the funny thing was, I was listening to the Commissar. You know, don't turn around, uh-oh.
Yeah, yeah.
And I thought that was Prince. And my brother goes, no, that ain't Prince. That's some other guy. This is his music. I listened to his music and I was like, wow. And it was the For You album. And off that album, he wrote a song called I Feel For You. And Shaka Khan redone it and made it big and better,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, because it's interesting that like numerous people did, like Sinead O'Connor did Nothing Compares, the Prince song.
Yeah.
So a lot of people had huge careers or huge hits off the back of his music as well. I think Warren Zevon did Raspberry Beret. Like his music it's kind of like Bob Dylan. You know, like someone can take it and make a hit out of it themselves. Like musically, it was such great music that he created.
Yeah, he plays like I think over 17 instruments.
Yeah. And
I remember one time Rove McManus said, "Man, you can play every instrument." And I was like, "Rove, ask if he can play the didgeridoo." Because I bet he probably could, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
And you know, I was really because he could play the flute, this, that, the other, and drums and guitars and all that. And you know, his dad being a musician, and you know, he learns at a young age and so on. And you know, it was quite funny because his first album was For You. Then I think after that album was Controversy.
Yes. Yeah.
And my friend, no word of a lie, he used to live in the islands near Papua New Guinea. So him and his brother used to listen to it, Prince music. And his grandmother came out and said, "Don't listen to that music." She said, "He's talking no good," you know?
Really?
Yeah, because that song was Controversy.
Yeah, yeah.
But what she heard was, "Shut your pussy." It was Controversy. But she thought the song goes, "Shut your pussy." Dun, 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 dun. Shut your pussy. Yeah, she goes, he's talking no good. Yeah. So we knew he had a dirty mind because he had a song called Dirty Mind.
She did listen to some of the tracks on Purple Rain.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so you know, a lot.
She was a visionary. She knew.
She knew.
She misinterpreted that initial track, but she knew.
She knew this guy was naughty. Yeah.
And she probably heard Cream and went, "Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, that's good.
There's nothing to see here."
Yeah, Cream is probably the only Prince song I don't really like.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
there is an acoustic version that he does of that song that I've seen. It's unbelievable. Yeah, this just him with the, because like you said, he's an amazing musician. But him playing that, I think it's on YouTube, and it's it's worth checking out. It's like a whole new appreciation I had for that song when hearing him.
You know, Joel, when you asked me, I for some reason when you said your favorite album, I went back to my teenage days.
Yeah.
You know, and Prince was a really big part of my teenage days.
Yes.
You know, and then I think as I hit my 20s and all that, I think the music changed.
Yeah, it's interesting you said it because like Akmal, when I did the podcast with him, he went back to his teenage for Abbey Road. You know, so there is something I think that we hold on musically from that impressionable age with music. And it's a great album too.
It's sold millions, you know, like one of my favorite bands on the movie, the Purple Rain movie was you know, The Time, Morris Day, and which was another part of Prince's bands. He had these protege bands.
Yeah.
You know? He had a band called The Family.
Yeah.
And they just wore silk pajamas.
Yeah, right.
You know, and and then you had Morris Day and The Time. And originally they were called Flight Time. And two of the guys came late to rehearsals, and he kicked them out the
Really? So they were the Flights, and they're just Time.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, it became The Time, and those two guys became the biggest music producers going, and their names was Terry Lewis and Jimmy Jam.
Right.
And they did music for, Janet Jackson, and many other artists as well, and and they were kicked out, and they tell the story about Prince kicking them out.
Yeah, they're probably like, thanks for kicking us out of the band, It got us in a new direction.
Yeah. And I've been I've always liked Prince's music. If I listen to it now, I kind of go, oh, okay, and it'll hold a certain spot, my teenage days, and I even had a purple bike back then.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, my brother was a spray painter, and I had this green Melvin Star racer bike. And we put the big handlebars on. I think they were angel handlebars.
Yeah, I remember those. And it was like riding a Harley.
Yeah, it was like riding a Harley. So we took the racer handlebars off, because we used to do all this, our own little bikes up,
Yeah.
Then when we put
my ride.
Yeah, it was like putting my bike, And even back then we had, we couldn't find a front tire, So we put a back tire on the front tire. Nice. So we had two thick tires, and now you get those fat tires.
Yeah.
We was doing that ages ago. So here I am on this bike, riding around in Townsville thinking I was Prince. And then my bike.
Dearly beloved.
Yeah, dearly beloved, and I think, I had a purple, my brother spray painted because he was doing his apprenticeship, and I asked him to paint my bike, and he painted it purple.
Oh,
and he took everything off, all the little badges, because he was such a perfectionist at this bike.
That's what you want. Yeah.
He sanded it down, he put a coat on, sprayed another coat, he put like 5 or 6 coats, then he sprayed some on it so you couldn't scratch it off.
Yes.
And then he put everything back on, and here
you must have been the envy of all the kids in the neighborhood.
Man, everyone
the coolest kid in town.
Everyone, yeah, man. And I would ride around thinking I was Prince. And it was really funny because Townsville is so hot.
Yes.
And then when Prince got his hair cut, because he did a movie called Under the Cherry Moon, and he had short back and sides, like your hair.
Yeah.
I went and got my hair cut. And for years in Townsville, the hot sun, I had my hair like this. I think it was a real 80s thing, It covered one eye.
Yeah, sure.
When I got the haircut, this side of my face was all white. She said the rest of it was all tan. Yeah, and I was like, oh my goodness, I got to match it all up. Yeah, so, so, man, I love his music. There's, When Doves Cry, and, Let's Go Crazy.
Yeah, a great opening to that song, Let's Go Crazy.
Yeah.
It just puts you in the mood.
Yeah, and, because he grew up in a place called Minneapolis, and Minneapolis has 2 towns, in the Minnesota, of course.
Yeah.
So Minneapolis and St. Paul is the other town.
I should know this, I've been there.
Yeah, so you got 2 towns there. Growing up in Townsville, guess what happened? They split the town. So you have Townsville one side, Thowngale on the other side. I go, man, I'm like Prince.
You're the Australian Prince. It's funny you mentioned that in Minnesota, because Amazing Jonathan that I used to work for, Prince sent him a message back in the day saying, I love your work. When you're in Minnesota, come to Paisley Park. I want to hang out with you. And and I said to John, did you take him up on the offer? Did you go? He goes, no, I feel too uncomfortable. So, all right. But then Prince came to Jonathan's show in Las Vegas. And my wife was working for Jonathan at the time, Erica. And Prince's people called up Erica and said, listen, when Prince arrives, he's only going to talk to you. He's only going to look at you. And so you take him into it, and she's like, yeah, okay. Sure enough, Prince turns up with his handler. Prince only talks to her and talking, then she walked him in and sat him down for the show. And I was like, it's so cool getting to meet, one of the greats.
Man, I wish I met Prince.
Yeah.
I saw him in concert.
Yeah.
Probably wasn't the concert I really wanted to see.
When was that? When would that have been?
Oh, gee, that was in the 90s. It was Diamonds and Pearls, and he was on this bed floating around with those two dancers, you know,
yeah.
that looked alike, or they were twins or whatever. For me, it wasn't the greatest concert. I mean, for me, you know, like I mean, it was a great concert. Sorry, but I would have loved to have seen, you know, these songs
in the prime.
Yeah,
back in the day.
Like Erotic City, 1999,
yes.
When Doves Cry, all the hit songs that I know, you know, and off that album, I didn't really know that album, the Diamonds and Pearls. I only just knew that one song, Diamonds and Pearls.
Yeah. he did the last time he toured here, he did a solo tour, just him, guitar and grand piano.
Wow.
Apparently it was phenomenal. I had someone that works at the State Theatre in Sydney, was telling me about it and just said, unbelievable. Because musically he was incredible, like, you know, like just sitting there on the piano, just being able to hold the whole audience and it became like he would encourage everyone to sing along with him as well. And it was another tour that he was on. It was before that one, I think the second last tour in Australia. I was doing a gig at the Acer Arena, the big Allphones Arena, I think it was at the time, in Sydney out at Homebush, and he had been on not too long before that, and the manager was telling me how it was a round stage in the middle of the arena, and for him to get out there, they would put him inside of a road case and wheel the road case through the audience. It would butt up against the edge of the stage, a little flap would open. He'd crawl out on all fours under the stage and then shoot up through the stage for the opening of the show, and everyone's like, how did he get out there? And then afterwards he left the stage and all the audience was leaving, and just on a whim, he wanted to keep on playing. So he ran back out onto the stage and plugged back in and started playing again. And everyone ran back in and he played for like another hour, just continuing the concert. Yeah. My
goodness. You know, like you watched a lot of comics that probably in your age area as well. Like, you know, when I'd hear the Dave Chappelle stories about, you know, the late great Charlie Murphy talking about Prince, and I knew all those stories, the Rick James stories and all that, and you kind of grow up listening to Rick James music. I had all Rick James albums, you know, and I had all these songs, and I knew they had, you know, and Rick James was out there, you know, and then
totally.
You know, they had and so when I saw it, I go, man, I know this, you know, and you kind of, you know, you knew Prince played basketball, you know. And they had the funny spin over the blouse versus the shirts or whatever, you know, and it's quite funny. You know, and little did you know, he was right into the basketball game.
Yeah, and he was a very, he was that kind of, there was like an enigma around Prince too. He had that kind of aura around him of mystery as well. So whenever you hear stories about him, like whenever I've heard like people, like, you know, you go to theatres and venues and you find out that, you know, someone like Prince played, they're always like, what was he like? What happened? Tell me about him. And there was one in Eden's Hill in Brisbane that Arj and I were performing at, and Prince had been there shortly before that too. I'm like, tell me, what was it like? And he had done his main big show at like the entertainment centre in front of like 15,000 people, but then he did an after party show out at Eden's Hill. And I said, what was he like? And he goes, well, I didn't really get to talk to him because his limo turned up. He went up the lift. The band was already there, ready to go, packed out at this after-party venue. It was about maybe like 1,300 people there, all jammed in. He comes up. He played for an hour, walked off stage. They handed him a suitcase with $100,000 cash in it. He took the suitcase, walked back down, got in the limo and drove off.
Wow.
And it was just this like straight in, straight out.
Wow.
Yeah, and same thing in Sydney too at the Ivy Bar as well. He did an after-party gig there. Turn up, take the money, and run.
Well, one thing I liked that I kind of learned from Prince, not that he taught me, but it was a funny thing where he went on the Jay Leno show and he drove in and he sang half a song. And the following night he came back and
finished the song. Really?
And sometimes if I'm doing a show during the day or something, and I'll do a half a joke. I go, if you want to see the end, come to my show tonight.
Yeah, you want the punchline. This is a show of setups. Yeah, it's a real there's something about that. Like I don't know. It's hard to compare today. Like who's the Prince of today, or who's the Michael Jackson of today, or who's like, you know, that from that generation that's come before. It just seems to be very. Just a unique, you know, sort of people for that time.
Yeah, and you're wondering, is someone like, in today's term, like the Ed Sheeran is the new Prince.
Right,
With his music abilities, he's just raw, he's talented and this, that, the other. But also today's generation, they know that music, they bring it all through their social medias, you know? You know, like you have a Fleetwood Mac, you know, the resurgence of that with their music, or Kate Bush, or this, that, the other.
Sure.
You know, and it's that new generation. My daughter said, Dad, I want a Tupac shirt, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, well, it's not going to cost $2, but we'll go get one, you know? But it's that thing of making this live on.
Yeah.
You know, and
you're right. It is great how the younger generation rediscover these greats that have come before.
Yeah. And you kind of go, Kate Bush, really? And I remember watching Kate Bush, you know? And you go, yeah. And then you realize, I mean, you knew how great she was, and then you realize, you know, running up the hill, you know, singing a song. And the kids are all singing it.
Yeah.
And you're like blowing your mind. And and it's all because of, you know, what they watch on their social media. And it just, and I think the future is our past. Of what they wear, you know, or what they listen to.
You see that, right? You see a lot. I see it was the 80s happening there, but you see a lot of 90s fashion now as well. Definitely. And like the new kicks, like the Jordan shoes.
Yeah, the Jordans.
Like, you see all the young kids wearing the shoes that we were into back in the 80s, right?
Doc Martens coming back.
Yeah, and it's kind of cool to see. It's like, I remember all this. I connect to all this.
Yeah.
I wore that.
I wore that and then you go to your 90s, you know, parties or whatever, you know.
Yeah. I remember my brother had a pair of Jordan 4s.
Yeah.
And when they came out, and I was so in awe of those shoes. I thought they were the coolest shoes ever.
Yeah.
And then he wore them out, then gave them to me. They were still too big for me. But I used to stuff paper into the toe of it, you know, and wear it around, walking around like Ronald McDonald with the big clown shoes on. But years later, they did a reissue of it, and I just bought like 3 different pairs of these Jordan shoes to sort of reconnect with my youth. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think for me, you know, loving music, loving hip hop and breakdancing, and my shoe of choice, you know, I love the Jordans. I loved, you know, the Michael Jordan, and probably go see the movie as well. But I was a massive fan of Run DMC.
Oh, the shell-toed Adidas. Yeah.
The superstars, I think they call them.
That's it. Yeah.
And still to this day, I have all these Adidas.
Yeah, that's cool.
And I remember going to a markets, and there was all these Adidas shoes, and there was a kid selling these Adidas shoes, these really nice shoes. And I said to the kid, "Is your dad like a b-boy or hip hop?" And he goes, "Yeah, how'd you know?" I got the shoes.
The shoes
pretty
tell
much
the story.
tell from the shoes. Yeah. Someone's got Jordan, they obviously might play basketball or be a fan of basketball. Someone who likes the old Run DMC stuff, Adidas, you know, they're usually into that old school, or the old Pumas or whatever, into the old breaking and stuff. Yeah. So I remember my shoe of choice, like once I got that Adidas and I could afford it.
Yeah.
I remember buying an Adidas and it had 4 stripes. And my brother called it a nonadas. And I actually, with scissors, I cut one of the stripes out so I could actually have 3. You know, because I couldn't.
What was it, like a limited edition style or what?
No, it wasn't even an Adidas. Oh, it was just from
the market.
Yeah, it was like a Chinatown.
Oh,
shoe
right, yeah.
And I bought it for like, you know, $12 or $20 at Chinatown in Sydney. And I remember,
Paddy's Market.
Yeah, Paddy's Market, you're right, it was Paddy's Market. And I bought it, and it had 4 stripes, and I took one of the stripes off it. My brother was watching me take this stripe off, and he goes, "That's a nonadas." You know?
My mate was in China, and he went and bought a pair of new Jordans from the market there, like the silk market. And he went back to London with him, and everyone on the courts in London, like, "Whoa, man, you got the coolest shoes. Look, he's got the new the reissue of the Jordan there." And he's like, "Yeah, I'm the man, you know." And he in mid game, he went up for a layup, and the whole sole of the shoe just came off the shoe, and they're all dying laughing at him. And he said 10 years later, he went back to that court, and he saw a guy. He goes, "Hey!" He goes, guys, this is the guy. This is the one I was telling you about. They're all laughing at him again. He's like, "I lived on."
Like I wasn't inspired by his shoes, Prince's.
Oh yeah, you would have had like the high heeled, and you would have been like 7 foot tall.
8-inch stilettos, you know. Like I've got a broad foot, I think. I think he might have a narrow foot.
Yeah. Well, he's a very short guy too, Prince.
Yeah. I think he's very small and petite.
Yes. Yeah, that would have been a good side. Well, that could be a new thing, you know. Spanish style shoes. You know?
Who knows? They were matador.
Yeah. Well, he dressed like a matador sometimes too, and he had that look.
I remember going to an op shop and seeing this frilly shirt. You know, and as much as I like Prince, I wanted to dress like him. Yeah. In Townsville. And Townsville's a pretty rough kind of, it's like an army place, it's a military place, it's a bit of a tough kind of place. Here I am walking around with this woman's blouse on. With my woman.
Yeah, fantastic.
At the time, you know, and I think, But the funny thing was, one time we had to go to our school disco, and it was grade 8, 1982 or 3 or something, and we had to come as a famous American singer or famous American. And my mom on the sewing machine made Michael Jackson's outfit.
Oh, which one?
It was like a commander jacket with.
Nice.
And she made that on the sewing machine.
Wow.
She had the gold rope. Sewed that all on.
Yeah, for the shoulders.
Yeah, and I had the glasses, and I had the curl come down,
and you would have had the moves too, being so good at dancing.
And I remember going to the disco, the school dance, and it was 1983, and they gave me a tennis racket. I won a tennis racket, and at the time I was like, I didn't even play tennis. But the funny thing is, my auntie's name is Venus Williams, but her sister's not Serena. Serena's Enid, my old auntie, And here I am with this tennis racket. I won it because I got the best costume.
Well, you would have been the envy of every kid in school. Like, if you had turned up to my school like that, you would have been, the coolest kid ever.
Well, I think it was really funny because I followed Prince, but I just somehow looked a bit like Michael Jackson. And I'm doing...
Can rock that.
Michael Jackson, like... They put Michael Jackson music on, but I'm actually dancing like Prince.
Yeah.
So I'm with this tennis racket, and obviously one of my other favorite albums was My Adidas, Run DMC. I was being a breakdancer and being into the breakdancing side of it. Getting into the DJing and mixing and scratching. Yeah,
it's what I loved about that time is so much new ground was being broken by so many musicians, especially with Run DMC, with what they were doing, with what Prince was doing, with what Michael Jackson was doing. It was just such a creative, the 80s was just an incredibly creative, sort of a new frontier.
Yeah, and you look at a lot of that music, and it wasn't about how good I look. It was all about going against the grain.
Yes.
It was about the revolution.
Yes.
It's all about, Prince has
underground.
A song. It was all underground. So Prince has a song called Ronnie Talked to Russia.
Yeah.
It was talking about Ronald Reagan, at the time. And, so many of these songs, 99 Luftballons and, it was about the wars that were going on at the time, or, the uncertainty of politics in countries. Yeah, and it was, that to me really, I guess, created... At an early age, the politics as well, to find
an interest in,
Not so much like me being political, but just you kind of had a bit of an understanding.
An awareness of what's going on.
What's going on in the world, and...
That's what's great with like so much music. Like Akmal and I were talking about it with Bob Dylan's music, and like you can enjoy it on the surface, but you scratch it away, and there's so much more going on, and it does it makes you go and research. Like, okay, what is this war that he's talking about, or what is this person in history that he's referring to? And it's a great offshoot.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, so many of those great musos, like with Bob Dylan's music, Reuben Carter and all
yeah,
that.
Yeah, the hurricane,
Hurricane,
yeah.
and
That's how I got to know about that story through that song of the hurricane and who Reuben Hurricane Carter was.
And you listen to Billy Joel's music and you go, my goodness, like it's all,
It's funny, Billy Joel's like my favorite from when I was a kid. That was the first concert I ever saw when I was a kid, the Bridge tour. Yeah. And just for him, he was one of those people that stuck with me musically from my childhood.
Yeah.
But songs like "We Didn't Start the Fire," which is just like it's a whole generation crammed into like 3 minutes.
I reckon it's one of the greatest songs. That song.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad. You should tell Billy Joel that, because he's always very dismissive of it. He goes, I'm just reading a list. He's very self-deprecating about himself.
It's a good list.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like a history lesson. Like for me, I was finding out about all of these people, and I remember I went and rented the film Lawrence of Arabia because he says that in the song. I'm like, who is this Lawrence of Arabia? You know?
Yeah.
Who was he? It was like a 6-hour film.
You know, there's musos, and then there's legendary musos that you really would love to see, and I would love to see, and Billy Joel is one of them.
Yeah.
James Brown, Bob Marley.
Yes.
You know, these are guys are like, I know they set the trends, you know, the Bob Dylans, you know, people like that, John Lennon, you know, and Paul McCartney or things.
Yeah. They transcend the music.
Yeah.
You know, like they become these iconic figures in themselves. Yeah, James Brown I would have loved to have seen.
I wish I saw James Brown. I used to love coming out on stage to James Brown because I felt that music kind of, you know,
it pumps the audience too.
Pumps it.
Yourself and the crowd.
And for me growing up, you know, there wasn't a lot of Aboriginal people on TV, but I saw James Brown and I said, he kind of looks like us.
Yeah.
We have to get the dancer and he's got the hair all brushed. And, how, you know? and you know, like often in my show, I might put in a James Brown song. You know, you feeling deadly? Hit me one time. You know, and all that kind of stuff. But James Brown, you know.
From when I was a kid, I always thought if I could dance like James Brown, I would die happy. I just like he like unbelievable. Those moves, but it wasn't like looking at the difficulty of the move. It was like, man, he just encapsulated the groove of the movement and the music that's playing. It's like he was an extension of the music. His body was. Yeah.
And you look at musos like him as well, like where it's not so much about him. You know, it's like power to the people.
Yes.
You know, say it loud.
Yeah.
You know, and. You know, and you can see it today in Black Lives Matter marches and protests. They'll say James Brown stuff, you know.
Yeah.
You know, these are all things that the new generation is bringing all back.
Yeah,
you know,
it's like the old saying, everything old is new again.
Old is new again, yeah. I might be old, but I'm new again. The rebirth.
Yeah. But it is an interesting thing especially for our generation. I think the kind of baby boomers might have changed this. That remember when you were younger and someone in their 50s or 60s, you know, they seemed older. You know? But then now you look at someone in their 50s or 60s, they don't seem old.
No.
You know, and I don't know if it's us because we're getting older and they don't seem. I wonder what the younger people think of, but just physically and the way people dressed and the way. But whereas, like, you look at a lot of the people from the generation before ours, like with the baby boomer generation, I think they were the game changers. They were the ones that came through and kind of changed the whole. No, just because you're that age, you don't have to be old. You don't have to think old. You don't have to act old. You don't have to, put on the slippers and sit in front of the fireplace.
Around,
It was like, So now I think, I just don't see that much of a barrier between young and old. You know.
You're absolutely right. Like I'm 100% behind you. Like my older kids would say, "Dad, when are you going to shop at Lowe's?" Or and smoke a pipe and
put on a tweed jacket.
Put on a tweed jacket with the elbow pads, and read the paper and like, okay, I'm busy hiking. You know? I'm listening to today's music. You know, like Migos and Justin Bieber and all this kind of like reinventing and just sort of thinking. Because music is music. I like all styles of music, and and I like fashion, as well. And I like, and all these things where you don't have to.
Yeah, you don't have to conform to that idea of what was.
Yeah.
But also too, with what we do as comedians, I think we're out of that 9-to-5 existence as well. So we're kind of out of the loop in terms of where, if you're working a job too, you might, there might be more of an ageist thing involved in it. But I think in comedy, like we were saying before, you can do it until you're, in your 80s, 90s, whatever. It doesn't really matter. So there's not really our mindset isn't within that, getting old kind of way of thinking. Yeah,
and I think that a lot of it has to do with we are changing our sets, so we're changing ourselves, changing everything.
Yeah, evolving.
Our look evolving, and we're doing what Madonna done.
Yeah.
We're dressing different each year, or we might find a new style or this style. We might wear our hair a certain way or whatever. And I think that's a part of being an artist is.
Yeah. Well, I have to say one thing that hasn't got old is the film that you've selected for us to talk about, your favorite film, which is none other than, have a look at this.
Oh my goodness. American Werewolf in London.
Classic.
I know it's crazy for me to watch this, and I first watched this, obviously when it first came out, and when I watched it, I was blown away.
I get it. Likewise.
I thought it was the greatest movie of all time. And I think people, not only like myself and you, Joel, Michael Jackson saw it and then he created Thriller from it.
Right, he got the director, John Landis, to direct Thriller.
That's right,
yeah.
So he saw the whole
transformation into the wolf.
Into the wolf of that guy with his hand. And it's all in the 1984 Thriller. Video. And I watched this and just, for me, it was a game changer for me in film, And I've always been fascinated with the Loch Ness Monster, the Bigfoot, werewolves, Dracula.
Yeah, that kind of folklore.
Yeah, those folklores, like the Dracula of Romania and stuff like that. And, and then having a werewolf, and, these two American backpackers are in England.
But it's great too, and I'm sure you warm to this. I remember watching it when I was a kid, the comedic to and fro between the two, which was like and the contrast to this film where it could be you're laughing out loud and suddenly like genuinely shocking. Like it was a great mix within the tone of the film.
I think the only movie that comes close to this that's in 2023 would be Cocaine Bear. In terms of...
So you saw it recently?
Comedic.
Yeah.
And then the other side where it's like violent and scary. And, this movie is a movie I've been chasing for years, because I was waiting to see, like Netflix, I keep checking out Netflix. No, we don't have that movie. How many times are you going to try and search? Like if you
think there'd be an algorithm like, look, it's clearly popular. We've had 4,000 searches on it. We've got to get it.
Like if I died, someone looked at my search, it'd be, man, what's the American Werewolf? And they, it's a bit like if you drank Coke and they go, oh, sorry, we don't have Coke. We've got Pepsi. Because they would ask me, oh, there's American Werewolf in Paris.
Yeah, no. Come on. I'm not going to dilute it.
You're like, what do you know? You don't want...
Yeah, ridiculous.
Yeah, I love this movie. And still to this day, from the moment it came out, still to this day, I watch it.
Fantastic.
And I just watch it and I'll have my own time or I'll make my kids watch it with me.
Great.
I just think it's the greatest, movie of all time. And I remember my first time I ever went to London and I went up the escalator.
In the tunnel?
Yeah.
The train station?
Yeah, at the train station at Piccadilly.
Yeah.
And when I came out to the top, the bus came around the roundabout and all that, and I just went straight back to this film.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is it.
That wild final scene.
Yeah. This is Werewolf in London.
Yeah.
And I've always just wanted to walk around or, spend or backpack or do something around London. And because it just had that eeriness, that cold, that fog, and, You know, when I see, you know, when I feel that kind of climate, or, you know, I'm traveling around, I see that, I kind of think, man, this is make a perfect movie, to, you know, a werewolf movie or something, yeah.
It's funny you say that with the train station, because when I was a kid, because I saw this when I was a kid, and whenever I would walk through a tunnel in a train station, like in the city at like St James Station or something, it always took me back to that. I always think, where was the London?
Same. You got to walk through that long tunnel.
Yeah.
And you're by yourself.
Yeah.
You're a bit on edge.
Yeah.
It brings you back to where the wolf was in that tunnel. Yeah. Man, it's amazing what it can do.
Well, yeah, how something can stick with you for so long. And
I think the famous comedy show where they did a joke around the werewolf, where they go, you know, they go, oh, they'd hear the wolf and they go, werewolf, and he'd go, oh, he's over there. You know? Monty Python.
Yeah, right. You know, I haven't seen that.
They'd hear the wolf in the background.
Yeah. Over there.
Yeah, werewolf over there. And I was inspired to do a joke because in Brisbane, there's Kangaroo Point. And I said a similar joke where, you know, the early settlers came or something, and, you know, and they, where did he go? And the kangaroo went, I forget how the joke went, but it was a kangaroo. And it became Kangaroo Point, you know? Yeah, werewolf, over there.
Did you get into the other movies of like John Landis, like the one that he did before that he wrote and directed, Blues Brothers? Man,
I love the Blues Brothers.
Yeah.
You know, I do a decades dance craze type routine in my show all the time, and it starts off with Shake a Tail Feather.
Yeah.
You know, the
Ray Charles. Where they're all in the street doing the dance.
Man.
Yeah. That's a phenomenal scene. I watched that again during lockdown. I went back and revisited a lot of classic films, and man, that film still holds up. It's great. And that scene just from the gate. I reckon it's one of the greatest dance choreographies. Yeah.
Like the choreography of it. It's almost like a flash dance.
Yes.
You know, and you watch it and just the movement of these guys, you know, like they're doing all the jazz ballet jumps and twirls and pirouettes and all that. Yeah, and man, that's another movie I really love. I mean, like, I could talk 80s music and
80s movies, music, everything 80s. But you're going to love that film, Air. I just saw it the other night, the new one about the Nike shoes, the Michael Jordan shoes, and it just transports you back to the 80s, 1984. All the music, the fashion, everything about the film. It's just like, wow, I feel like I'm back, you know?
Well, I'm going to go see it,
yeah.
I'm definitely going to go see it, yeah.
Yeah, and it's great with that film too, with Air. It's just the acting in it's really solid, but the script and, you know, the shoes about Nike trying to sign up Michael Jordan to promote, you know, to have his own shoe, and it's you would think, oh yeah, I guess that'd be good, but 2 hours later, he's like, I want more. I want to stay in this world.
Jeez,
it's great, yeah.
I might go watch it now.
Yeah. You're up at 4:30.
Up at 4:30.
You flew back to Sydney.
Yeah.
You're back to Melbourne. You did your gig this afternoon. You've done a
podcast.
And now movie time.
And I think it's the life of performers.
Yeah.
We might complain, but we're not really complaining about how busy we are. And then we go, oh my God, I got to go on a plane. I got to fly here, do a gig here. Then after that gig, we're going to fly back, do another gig. But we love it.
Yeah.
It's that adrenaline rush. It's, you know, when we're sitting around doing nothing, we kind of go.
Yeah, that's right. Idle hands. Oh,
idle hands. What? Am I still relevant?
Yeah.
Maybe I'm going to write, you know?
Yeah.
Ring up the phone. Yeah, give me a gig, you know?
Yeah. Well, speaking of dealing with that, the final one that we have to look at today is the book that you've selected, which is Think Like a Monk.
Yes! You know, a friend of mine's wife just went and met him last night.
Oh, really?
And got a photo and
Where was this?
This was here. I read this book, but in the weirdest sense, because my missus, because I drive so long, I drive like 8 or 10 hours a day.
Sure.
And I'm usually listening to 80s music along the way, you know?
Yeah.
And she said, you should listen to podcasts.
Yeah.
And I said, I don't even know what a podcast is. You know, audiobook and all these kind of things.
Yeah.
I had no idea what it is. I go, how do I get it? Like, you know, I've got a mobile phone, but what do I do?
Yeah.
And so she put this on.
Oh, fantastic.
And we were driving from 16 hours to Brisbane. And she put Think Like a Monk. And I was like, whoa, this guy talks how I think.
Yeah.
And it's all about, what I found was, what the balance in life, you know, how do you find what is in your life, the purpose of what you're doing, you know, be purposeful.
Yeah.
You know, that's what my, you know, the missus got me onto this, and I was like, Think Like a Monk. Well, I've never heard this before. I did hear of this, but I never saw it.
Right.
You know, and
you're like, look, I've met the Dalai Lama. I've hung out with a monk. But think like a monk. This is another approach.
Yeah, and I think it's one thing I say, to be true to yourself is to eat, live, and breathe it. And when you eat, live, and breathe it, is if you take on that skill of becoming a comedian, surround yourself with comedians, surround yourself with watching comedy shows, or you heighten your senses by watching a scary movie or something, but you're writing the comedy, listening to the comedy, listening to your kids watching comedy shows. I remember my older kids be watching Simpsons, and I'd be washing up or cleaning up, and I'd hear all the jokes, you know, and you know, and I'd be laughing. I'd be like, man, this is so funny, you know, and I think with Think Like a Monk is to have all of that, but to find that peace in the crazy world. How do you find that?
Like, how to navigate that.
Yeah, how do you navigate that? Yeah, and I think I've found it. You know, I think I've found that craziness.
Yeah.
And I mean, you tell someone, oh, you got to fly to Sydney, fly back, and then do a show, and you know, and all that kind of stuff, and they're like, my God, you know.
How to keep level throughout that too.
And you're doing like 15 shows a week, or this, that, the other.
Yeah.
How do you find it? You know? And I think, you know, reading this book, you know, or I think I already found it though, but it kind of
reaffirmed.
That's it.
Yeah.
It reaffirmed. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because sometimes you do, you know, you read a poem or you hear it, and it just solidifies or reaffirms what I think instinctively it gets us back to that way of thinking. Or a lot of the times when you read something that resonates, it's almost sort of like it's in the DNA somewhere, but it's easy to forget about it with the craziness and the static that's with the white noise, especially in our society. You know, the amount of things we're inundated with, to be able to keep it level and navigate that is something we naturally should be doing, but there's so many distractions. So many distractions, and so much that we're competing with, that we beat up ourselves, and the competition of it, that it's no competition to ourselves. And I think Like a Monk is you are the Buddha. You are this person. You are the Kung Fu Panda. You are that, you know. Yeah. You are your own God, you know. You are, you know, and that, you know, the people involved in your life, that is, you know, it all works in. There's an interconnectedness. Yeah, it is interesting, that kind of philosophy that does ride through like a lot of the major religions, and that idea of we are all connected. Yeah. We're all, you know, what I do to you has an effect on me, as it has an effect on someone else. And I think I think we forget that a lot, you know. There's a lot of me versus them and them versus them, divisiveness, you know. Yes. When it's like, you know, I don't mean to sound like, you know, start beating the drum and become kumbaya or whatever, but I honestly have always felt that there is this connectedness that we all share, and you know, what we all do to each other does have an effect back on us, you know. Absolutely, you know, absolutely. It's all there, and that's why I've really connected to this book, you know. And I just thought, wow, I just drove 16 hours listening to this book, which normally I would be listening to 80s music, but I got so much out of this. Yeah. And it, like you said, it reaffirmed. It was like I had like a flabby titty, and they filled it up with silicone, and it reaffirmed it again. No, but and there are these guys that I guess we have those doubts,
you know, and having guys like this guy have his book, because we can't always get it from, you know, our kids or our partner or whoever, but by having this, sometimes I think for some reason we want to impress our nearest and closest, but somehow we will listen to someone who's far away, that, you know, like for me to listen to him or David Goggins or whoever, I kind of go, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
You know, that makes sense to me, you know, and
I assume there'll be a lot of human truths in there that we've seen before or heard before, but having it accessible as well, you know. It's like we don't have to go and sit in an ashram for a decade to figure out, you know, what all these lessons are. Read it in a book or take a 8.5-hour trip, and, you know, we get it. Yeah,
and I think coming from, you know, our cultural background as well, you know, and whether it's a religious background for some people or whatever it is, but we've always meditated. You know, you've often, you know, as Aboriginal people, you know, we go in the bush, you know, we sit there, we're quiet, we're actually with one, with our surroundings, you know, and when we die, we actually become that again.
Sure.
You know, and we believe that the whole wide world, we're underneath the skin, all that, there is that, what you're saying, the connectedness of it all, is we're all the exact same people.
And I think that's it's very easy for people to forget.
Yeah.
You know, because it does feel, especially in, like with the online, like the stuff that people go back and forth with, and the media and everything in the world, it's like, there's a real division throughout the world. But what you just said, that we're all essentially the same. Yeah. You know, when it comes down to it, as people, you know, you take away all the things that people want to, you know, project to themselves or say, I'm this and that person's that. It's at the end of the day, we're all connected.
Man, we are. Like I said to my kids, you know, don't ever walk past, you know, someone on the street, a homeless person, you know, because your granddad's that person too, you know. And we walked past a homeless guy in Melbourne, and my daughter said to him, your art is so beautiful. And he gave her an art piece.
Oh, nice.
And so every day for the week and a half, because she only just met him in that 2 weeks, the first week, first few days, she would say, good morning, Shane. This guy has a name, you know, and that's all it is. People just want to be respected. You know, people just want to, you know, just be, that's the end of the thing, belong.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, Sean, it's been fantastic connecting with you today. I appreciate. Look, it feels like trains, planes, and automobiles. Your day today.
Yeah.
You know, you going to Sydney, coming back. It's been non-stop.
I was on a plane, trams, and the automobile. If I get a scooter or something.
Yeah.
But you know, it's been an honor and a pleasure. You know, because when I you know, you asked me to come here, and I was like, Joel Ozborn, I saw you, and there's a few shows that stand out in my memory, and one is you and Akmal.
Yeah.
You know, Jamoan, you know, and, you know, Charlie Murphy, you know, and a few other comics like that, but man, you stand out for me. And what you stood out for me was you nailed Arnold Schwarzenegger's voice, you know?
Oh, yeah, I remember. God, that's an old bit. We're going back there, back in the day,
And I was just like, what? This is so good. And I was like, how come I can't do accents? I wish I could do accents, but I can't do accents. You know, and I was like, you know, to the chopper, but I can't do it.
I can't move like you do. You know, if I could dance like you do, I'd die a happy man. You know, like, I remember doing gigs with you back in the day, and like we were doing like, I remember it was like in Concord at a golf club or something, and just watching your movement on stage, I was just in awe of. I was just like, man, if I could, you know, if I could do that, that'd be fantastic, you know.
Man, and neither of us own a Concord today.
No, you're right. Damn. They need to bring that stuff back. You could have been to Sydney and back within 20 minutes.
Man, I could have been like Phil Collins.
Yeah.
You know, in 1985's...
At the Live Aid.
The Live Aid.
Yeah.
He did a show in London, flew on a Concorde to America, did it there, and he flew
straight,
back to London.
Yeah, Philadelphia or something.
Something like that. Yeah. And I just thought, wow.
Yeah.
That's the way to do it.
That's the way to do it.
Concorde. So then I went to Concorde, and who did I see?
Yeah.
Not Phil Collins. Joel Ozborn!
Well, it's great to see you again, brother. It's fantastic, mate. Well, I'll see you along the road at some point, I'm sure.
Man, you will.
Thank you, mate.
Thank you. Man, that was so good, eh? Man, we can talk, eh?